Welcome to ThinkDenton.com. My name is Kevin Roden. We're here with Mayor Mark Burroughs, who's running for re-election in the May 8th City Council election. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
Why is it that you're interested in a second run at this? I understand you don't make a lot of money at this job.
Right, like zero.
Exactly. But how many hours a week do you tend to have to put into this job?
And that's a question that I've analyzed a lot. It averages about 30 hours, about 30 hours a week. Yeah, it is a volunteer job. It's on a supplement to my real job. I do have to work. I have to earn an income. I have one child left at home. I had two when I started. So yes, it is a juggling act. The thing about becoming involved at this level is that you don't start off at this level. I mean, to be a responsible citizen and to do a responsible job, you have to learn about what makes the city tick. So I've been volunteering for years in different organizations at different levels, and there's a progression that happens that I've noticed. Mm-hmm. And if you do a pretty good job as a soldier, you tend to get elevated and you become a chairperson or as committee chair or something, and then you become president of the organization. And then another organization sees, because you're working with other volunteers, other folks see that you do a pretty good job and you get asked to do the same thing in another organization. And there are so many wonderful organizations and needs in the city that there's a constant pull. And over time, it just seemed to progress, and then the next logical course was either school board or city council, because it's really the highest level of local community service that exists, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And so I did the city side.
What motivates you to spend so much time doing it? What's kind of the driving force in Mayor Burroughs' soul, so to speak? Well,
and that's hard to define. One thing is, I recognize very clearly that I've been very lucky. I'm one of 7 kids, and I'm the only one to have graduated college. I didn't have to work real hard at my grades, but I did really well. I mean, I've just been lucky. And in business, the first 10 years of my practice, I actually made less than my secretary did. So I didn't do so great then, but I didn't have a family, and I was on my own. I didn't need the material side. So I was learning, investing, in my opinion, in learning the trade. But ever since then, and since I moved from Fort Worth, which is where I was, moved to Denton, I have been absolutely blessed with good luck. And my business has done extremely well, my family's wonderful, and this community has just been so supportive. I was raised with the thought you're supposed to give back. And what does that mean? Well, that means try to use what you have the best way that you can. And I do that in work, but I also do that in the volunteer stuff. And so I have a gift of gab, and I actually love people. And so and I'm a pretty creative guy. I'm not real organized. I tend to be in lots of places at once, doing lots of different things. But I've tried to channel that into a constructive outcome. And the city work has been perfect for that, because boy, it needs creativity. Mm-hmm. You know, you find that there are things that have never changed over years and years and years, and the inertia is unbelievable. And we're a fast growth city, so to me it was exciting, the whole concept of helping to fashion the pathway that a city that, for example, the last 4 years has been in the top 20 fastest growing cities in the United States, 2 of the last 3 years in the top 10. Mm-hmm. Well, there is a dynamic going on that you have to have energy. And my perception had been, especially early 20 years ago, is that there wasn't perhaps a lot of dynamic energy at the highest levels of local government, mostly because the city is a very old city. It's got traditions which need to be preserved, but to address these growth issues that were engulfing Louisville and other cities to our south, and were clearly coming our way, I felt it was time to jump in. And so that's really what kicked me off and kicked me in, and I've really enjoyed it.
Great. Well, let's talk the economy. It seems to be shaping up as probably the #1 issue in this race.
Yeah, I think that's true.
As evidenced by some of the comments of the forums. Sales tax revenue is down 5%. Property taxes are expected to decrease, all with a projected $3 to $5 million a year budget deficit for the next 5 years. Is that correct?
That's a pretty accurate figure. When you say budget deficit, the city never actually runs a deficit. By law, we have to have a balanced budget every year, so it's not a deficit like the federal government deficit, right, where there is no money sitting around somewhere. Right. Our city actually built up over a 25% of an entire budget reserve fund, right, which is more than twice what the objective is for ordinary cities of our size. 12% has been a pretty consistent objective. A lot of cities don't make that. Well, we were up over 25%.
So do you expect having to tap into that?
That's what the projection is over the next 5 years.
Gotcha.
Is to tap into that, bring it down more in line with what the norm is. But the pressure is, and what this economy has done, because the dip was much more than anticipated 2 years ago, and again this year, the dip has been prolonged. It destabilizes further out than 5 years. And so when you're trying to project out and you add the next year, you complete a year, you add the next year, that projection is lower than what you had anticipated. And so we're actually, that 5th year, we are not projected to be where we need to be. And so that's part of what the discussion is now. We have to do something now to alter the course while we're far enough away from that out year. To a relatively series of minor alterations should be able to get us to where we're not going below in reserves where we need to be.
So here's an example of a need for creativity.
That's right.
Solving this problem is going to be some sort of combination of cuts on some level and trying to find new sources of revenue. Let's talk cuts to begin with. I know the City Council has already started kind of bouncing around possible ideas for cuts, right, as reported in the paper. What would you advocate, if you're willing to do so now, the types of things that you think we could probably cut in the next few years?
Well, it's an interesting thing. One of the things that was done last year, which I completely supported as an approach to looking at cuts, was that our management did a survey and went to all of the departments and asked them to identify 5% across the board, blind, basically, a cookie-cutter approach. If you had to cut 5% of your budget, identify those things that you would cut in order of priority with your justifications. And so, armed with those from the people who are on the ground, you got some detail, and then that got filtered to council so that we could start looking at it. Now, frankly, this past year we had really good luck. We have not had to cut services. We have frozen some jobs. Some things that we were projected to get, like we were supposed to get 6 police officers funded by the ARRA, federal the stimulus plan. We qualified for it with our population, but we lost those 6 officers. I tend to look at it, we lost them to Dallas. And the reason we lost those officers, which we were projecting to get, we lost them because we didn't have a murderer in our city that previous year. Well, so you're actually penalized under certain state and federal programs, and it's not isolated, but it's the one
program.
Oh my gosh, yeah, go out there and
Let's
commit
kill
more
some
crime,
people. Yeah.
or do it at least in the right year,
right.
Because unfortunately we've had several this year. Had this year been the previous year, we would have gotten 6 new officers paid for with our tax money, which we're paying. We would have gotten them. Well, in fact, we didn't, and we don't have the budget to hire them, even though we have a need. So our growth has put pressure on the city to expand certain services, expand them. We haven't been able to do that. So one of the things that we've done is not expand where we should be expanding. We kind of held pat, and to do that is not easy. Some things were absolutely vital, and those things are done. But pretty much across the board, we've frozen where we were 2 years ago.